Hello, and welcome to another edition of Conversations with the Expert in 11 Canterbury. My guest today is Lauren Cantor, a real Renaissance person. I was looking at your CV, Lauren, an undergraduate degree in astrophysics, a career on Wall Street, both in trading and strategy, and then you're working in fine arts and design. You're teaching college level classes, consulting on artificial intelligence. I get tired reading about all of that. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion. I thought with that, I might ask you about professional football because I didn't see that on the list. What we wanted to talk about today was artificial intelligence, and it's something you've been working on. I've heard a lot about artificial intelligence and the impact that it'll have on society, ranging from the extinction of human beings all the way to, which seems a bit over the top, to it's another tool that we have to learn how to use. So the question is, AI, is this kind of an invention like the washing machine, or is it more like an invention like the internet or vaccines that really transcend and transform things?
Thanks, Dan. I think it's a really interesting question. And first of all, thank you so much for having me today. I think AI is unique in that it's really one of the most transformative technologies that hasn't been developed with the help of the government, right? If you think of vaccines, if you think of GPS, if you think of the internet, most of those were developed or at least had a big part of government funding to help in that development. If you think about at least the generative AI era that we're living in now, it's all being funded by the private sector. So there's a little bit of concern in the sense that the AI is being developed without regulations. It's being developed for profit motives and not necessarily for the humanity and human good. And then the second wave, AI is being developed and replacing white collar jobs. This is kind of the first time we're seeing that technology and the industrial revolution is going after cognitive jobs rather than physical jobs. So while I don't think AI is going to be our, lizard overlords and take over the world, and I have a very optimistic view towards AI, I view it as a collaborator, as kind of my intern. I do think it is definitely changing the way we work, and it will change the jobs that we have. But I don't think it's necessarily that we should be afraid of Skynet, afraid of from the Terminator taking over our lives.
I take your point. I hadn't thought about not having government involved in creating something like this. And sometimes it's hard to put regulations and security in after it's already created. I think back to Microsoft developing the Windows operating system, and that was an era and everything is going to be open and free and people sharing. And then afterwards, trying to secure it became a very difficult task after you had a zillion people already using it. So we've touched a bit on using AI and disrupting white collar jobs for the first time. So it's not somebody on the assembly line. I even talked with my daughter, who's a lawyer. There's those kinds of jobs too. My son teaches at the university and said that people who maybe 5 years ago were going into computer science are shifting out of that because there's a thought that a lot of the coding jobs may disappear as well. Are there safe havens or places where you should be spending your time?
I do think AI is transformative and it should be used as a collaborator. It's definitely helped me become more productive. It's definitely with my clients. They use it for more efficiency, for speed, to do the mundane tasks that, used to take a lot of time. I think the jobs that AI will never be able to replace are those that require, EQ, as they say, emotional intelligence, right? AI is never really going to be able to replace social workers or even teachers, anything that really needs a human interaction. I think we found right after COVID, after the pandemic, that we all really craved human interaction and doing things in real life made a big difference. And I don't think AI is ever going to be able to replace that. So I think those type of jobs will never get replaced. I also do think that even though computer coding jobs are on the way down, I really do think it's necessary to understand how to code, because the more you know how to code, the better you will be at steering AI in the correct
Yeah,
in the
I
right
mean, I think that's what you said is steering is a word I've heard in the use of AI. I talked with someone today about supply chain, and she was saying you can get really good advice from AI if you're really careful about understanding the question, understanding your process, and you can get analysis done. But if you take it in a kind of a superficial level, you can get superficial results. I think you also talked about teaching jobs. My son teaches at the universities today, and he's noticed that, again, you have some people using AI but not really understanding what they're doing. So he teaches economics, and they've learned how to kind of handle the problem sets, the math problem sets, but then you get them in a verbal discussion, and they can't quite remember whether the supply and demand curve goes this way or that way. So it seems like for teaching right now, it's fairly easy to see when AI has written an essay question that may get harder. What do you do? Can you tell about AI generated essays, or are there other things you can do to make sure people know what they're talking about?
So I'm a big proponent of AI in class, depending on the age of the user. I would never use it in elementary school or junior high. Definitely for high school and college, I want my students to know how to use AI responsibly and ethically, and depending also on the university setting. Some universities believe using AI is cheating. I don't. I think students need to know how to use it because I think they're going to have to use it in their schools. But
I just might interject.
mhm,
I remember in the university when I was there, they were worried about people using calculators,
right.
right? And we have to just keep the engineers on slide rules.
Right. Same thing. I wasn't allowed to use a calculator in the olden days either.
Right. Um,
Right. And spell check and cursive, those things are gone as well.
mm,
But Zoom, I think, also accelerated a change to education, right? Students have a much shorter attention span. Teaching online changed the way we teach as well. So one thing that I've found with my students is there's a trick called prompt injection, where you can add white text into your assignments and ask it to add, $10,000 to an answer. So the students will get the answer wrong automatically if they don't know that there's white text in there. So that's one way to trick them on a quiz to see if they're cheating. Also, there's what I all try like to do is to not do that many take-home assignments, but if I do the take-home assignments, then we first thing we do is we talk about it in class. So it's all interaction, it's all teamwork, it's all collaboration, it's all trying to teach critical thinking skills rather than getting them to study for the test. So Anthropic, the makers of Claude, just did a study actually looking at how students use Claude, and it was pretty interesting. They found Claude is actually really good at writing code, and they found, as we would think, that the people that use Claude the most are STEM majors. But they didn't use Claude as much for school, or that's what they thought. They don't know for sure. But they do use it a lot to come up with practice questions and come up a lot with helping them do their homework. So people are using AI. They can't tell from how they use it, whether they're cheating doing their homework or they're using it to help them study for a test.
It sounds like a really sophisticated tool that people really need to learn how to use in the best way. And I think excluding it from the classroom doesn't strike me as smart.
Definitely depending on the age of the students, I think it is a
Yeah.
disservice. Like you said, I think it is kind of the calculator, the Excel spreadsheet of the now or the future. It's a tool that students are going to have to use. There was even an article from the CEO of Shopify where he talked about that in his job interviews. He's going to actually ask people, like, what can you do with AI? And so it's kind of a requirement for job interviews these days.
Interesting. I wouldn't, just as an aside, underestimate elementary school students. My grandson in kindergarten was using Zoom during COVID, and he came to me, saw me doing Zoom, and he told me, "Did you know if you change your name to connecting to audio, the teacher will think that your computer is broken and leave you alone?" Right. So it's kind of amazing what they can come up with. It seems like this is a really interesting topic. It's a lot more to say. I'm sure we'll have another discussion. I really thank you for your time and for enlightening me. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lauren.
Thanks so much for having me, Dan. Really appreciate it.